All right. White Goddess, Chapter 4, page 91. The sequence is different, and the lapwing has been as busy as ever, but I learned a good deal from the variants. In place of the land of the summer stars, the land of the cherubims is mentioned. Both mean the same thing. The 18th Psalm, verse 10, makes it clear that the cherubim are storm cloud angels, and therefore, for Welshmen, they are resident in the west, from which quarter 9 storms out of every 10 blow. Yeah, the summer stars are those which lie in the western part of the firmament. The first two lines in stanza 18, I have been in an uneasy chair above Sire Sidin, helped me. There is a stone seat at the top of Seder Idris, the chair of Idris, where, according to the local legend, whoever spends the night is found in the morning either dead, mad, or a poet. The first part of this sentence evidently belongs to the Idris riddle, though Guyon, in his Kurd am Vib Lear, mentions a perfect chair in Ser Sedai, revolving castle, the Elysian fortress where the cauldron of Cardoin was housed. The text of stanza 2, Johannes the Diviner, I was called by Merlin, seems to be purposely corrupt, since the Mabinogian version, the sense is, Idno and Heinen called me Merlin. I thought at first that the original line ran, Johannes I was called, and Merlin the Diviner. And I was right so far as I went. Golly, man. Merdwin, or Merlin, who in medieval romances is styled Merlin, see, told you, was the most famous ancient prophet in British tradition. The manifest sense of the stanza is that Guyon had been called Merdwin, dweller in the sea, by Heinen, Maelgwyn's chief bard, because like the original Merlin, he was a mysterious birth, and though a child had confounded the bardic college at Dwagony, exactly as Merdwin, according to Nennius and Geoffrey of Monmouth, had confounded Vortigern's sages. That he had, also been called John the Baptist. That's right. But thou, child, shalt be called the prophet of the Most Highest, but that eventually everyone would call him Taliesin, radiant brow, the chief of poets. Dr. McCullough suggests that there was an earlier Taliesin, that the 6th century bard, and that he was a Celtic Apollo, which would account for the radiant brow and for his appearance among other fated gods and heroes at King Arthur's court in the romance of Kilwa and Olwen. Apollo himself had once been the dweller in the sea. The dolphin was sacred to him, and oddly enough, John the Baptist seems to have been identified by early Christian syncretists in Egypt with the Chaldean god Oannes, who, according to Berosus, used to appear at long intervals in the Persian Gulf disguised as the merman Oedicon, and renew his original revelation to the faithful. The case is further complicated by the myth of Huon, the flower goddess, Bloodwed's victim, who was really the god Lula, another sea dweller. It took me a long time to realize that the concealed sense of stanza 2, which made the textual corruption necessary, was a heretical paraphrase of the passage in the 3 synoptic Gospels. Mark 16:14, Mark 6:15, Luke 9:7-8. Some say thou art John the Baptist, and some Elias, and some one of the ancient prophets risen from the dead. But Peter answered, thou art the Christ. The completing phrase, and Elias, occurs in stanza 8. The divine child is speaking as Jesus Christ, and I believe he also is in stanza 14. I have suffered hunger with the Son of the Virgin. Jesus was alone then, except for the devil and the wild beasts. But the devil did not go hungry, and the wild beasts in the temptation context, according to the acutest scriptural critics, e.g. Professor A.A. Bevan and Dr. T.K. Chian, were also of the devil's party. The Mabinogian version, line 31, is, I have suffered hunger for the Son of the Virgin, which comes to the same thing. Jesus suffered hunger on his own account. The answer to this riddle was simply Jesus, as Taliesin was the answer to Johann and Meriden the diviner, and Elias I was called. I was in the ark with Noah and Alpha in stanza 10, and I was in Cerbedian Tetragrammaton stanza 6. Must together refer to the holy unspeakable name of God. Alpha and Omega was a divine paraphrasis which it was permitted to utter publicly, and the Tetragrammaton was the cryptogrammic Hebrew way of spelling the secret name in 4 letters, JHWH. I thought at first that I was the Cerbedian belonged to the Lot riddle, because Lot is the Norman French name for Lud, the king who built London, and Cerbedian is Carbatus or Bath, which according to Geoffrey of Monmouth was built by Lud's father, Bludud. But to Gwion, the Welshman Lud was not Lot, nor is there any record of Lud's having lived at Bath. I let the Cerbedian riddle stand over for a while, and also the riddle I was Alpha Tetragrammaton, if this conjunction composed the riddle, the answer to which was evidently a 4-letter divine name beginning with A. Meanwhile, who was bard of the harp to Dion, or Leon, or Lachlan, or Lachlan? Line 28 in stanza 14. Dion, king of Lachlan and Dublin, is an oddly composite character. Dion is a variant spelling of Don, who, as already pointed out, was really Danu, the goddess of the Tuatha De Danann. The invaders of Ireland patriarchized into king of Lachlan, or Lochlane, or Dublin. Lochlane was the mythical undersea home of the later Fomorian invaders of Ireland, against whom the Tuatha De Danann fought a bloody war. The god Tethra ruled it. It seems that legends of the war between these two nations were worked by later poets into ballad cycles celebrating the 9th century wars between the Irish and the Danish and Norse pirates. Thus the Scandinavians came to be called the Lochlanak, and the Danish king of Dublin was also styled as king of Lachlan. When the cult of the Scandinavian god Odin, the rune maker and magician, was brought to Ireland, he was identified with his counterpart Gwydion, who in the 4th century BC had brought a new system of letters with him to Britain and had enrolled as a son of Danu or Don. Moreover, according to the legend, the Danes had come to Britain from Greece by way of Denmark, to which they had given the name of their goddess, and in medieval Ireland, Danane or Dane became confused, the Danes of the 9th century AD getting credit for Bronze Age monuments. So Dion of Lachlan must stand for the Danes of Dublin. These pirates with their sea raven flag were the terror of the Welsh, and the minstrel to the Danes at Dublin was probably the sea raven, sacred to Odin, who croaked over their victims. If so, the answer to the riddle was Morvaran, sea raven, who was the son of Cardowen, and according to the romance of Kilwich and Olwen, the ugliest man in the world. In the triads, he is said to have escaped alive from the Battle of Camlin, another of the 3 frivolous battles of Britain. Because everyone shrank from him, he must be identified with Afagdu, son of Cardowen, from whom the same supreme ugliness is claimed in the romance of Taliesin, and whom she determined to make as intelligent as he was ugly. I wondered whether Leon of Lachlan in the Merovingian version was a possible reading. Arthur had his court at Celeron upon Usk, and the word Celeron, Caerleon, is generally taken to mean the camp of the legions, and certainly the 2 Celerleons mentioned in the 7th century Welsh catalogue of cities, Caerleon upon Usk and Caerleon upon Dee, are both there explained as Castra Legionis. If Gwion accepted this derivation of the word, the riddle would read, I was bard of the harp to the legions of Lachlan's, and the answer would be the same. The name Leon occurs in Gwydian's Cadir Tyrone, the royal chair, the lacerated form of the corsleted Leon, but the context is corrupt, and Leon may be a descriptive title of some lion-hearted prince, not a proper name. Then there was the riddle in stanza 8 to consider. I was on the horse's crupper of Eli and Enoch, an alternative to the misleading Book of Enoch riddle in the Mabinogian version. I was instructor to Eli and Enoch, of which the answer is Uriel. In both texts, Elias is really a part of the heretical John the Baptist riddle, from which the lapwing has done her best to distract attention. Her false connection of Elias and Enoch has been most subtly made. For these two prophets are paired in various apocryphal gospels: the history of Joseph the carpenter, the Acts of Pilate, the Apocalypse of Peter, and the Apocalypse of Paul. In the Acts of Pilate, for instance, which was current in Wales in Latin translation, occurs the verse, I am Enoch, who was translated hither by the word of the Lord, and here with me is Elias the Tishbite, who was taken up in a chariot of fire. But the real riddle in the Mabinogian version proves to be, I was instructor to Enoch and Noah. In this version, I was on the horse's crupper of Eli and Enoch. The mention of Elias is otis. I don't know that word is odious. Odious. For Enoch, like Elias, was caught up alive into heaven on a chariot drawn by fiery horses. So the answer again is Uriel, since Uriel means flame of God. Now perhaps I could also answer Uriel to the riddle I was in Serbedian. For according to Geoffrey of Monmouth, a sacred fire was kept continually burning in the temple of Serbedian, or Bath, like that which burned in the house of God at Jerusalem. There is a variation between the texts, a day and a year in stocks and fetters, line 30, and a year and a half in stocks and fetters, stanza 15. A year and a half makes no obvious sense, but a day in a year can be equated with the 13 prison locks that guarded Elphin, if each lock was a 28-day month and he was released on the extra day of the 365. The ancient common law month in Britain, according to Blackstone's commentaries to 94142, is 28 days long unless otherwise stated, and the lunar month is still popularly so reckoned, although a true lunar month or lunation from new moon to new moon is roughly 29 and a half days long, and though 13 is supposed to be an unlucky number. The pre-Christian calendar of 13 4-week months with one day over was superseded by the Julian calendar, which had no weeks, based eventually on the year of 12 30-day Egyptian months with 5 days over. The author of the Book of Enoch, in his treatise on astronomy and the calendar, also reckoned a year to be 364 days, though he pronounced a curse on all who did not reckon a month to be 30 days long. Excuse me. Ancient calendar makers seem to have interposed a day which had no month and was not therefore counted as part of the year. Between the first and the last, their artificial 28-day months, so that the farmer's year lasted, from the calendar maker's point of view, literally a year and a day. In the Welsh romances, the number 13 is of constant occurrence. 13 precious things, 13 wonders of Britain, 13 kingly jewels, the 13 prison locks then were 13 months, and on the extra day, the day of liberation, the day of divine child, Elphin was set free. This day will naturally have fallen just after the winter solstice, 2 days before Christmas, when the Romans had their midwinter festival. I saw that if the true reading is in stocks and fetters, a year and a day, then this clause should be attached to primary chief bard am I to Elphin in line 1, for it was Elphin who was fettered. Now, Gwion Jones dissents from the usual view that the word Mabinogian means juvenile romances. He suggests, by analogy with the Irish title Mac and Ioc applied to Angus of the Bro, or Bruh, that it means tales of the son of a virgin mother, and shows that it was originally applied only to the 4 romances in which Pryderi, son of Rhiannon, appears. The son of a virgin mother is always born at the winter solstice, which gives point to the story of Philip Brydid's contention with the minstrels for the privilege of first presenting Prince Rhys Enoch with a song on Christmas Day, and also his mention of Malgwyn and Elphin in that context. The riddle in stanza 16, I have been in the buttery, must refer to Kai, who was in charge of King Arthur's buttery. The line, cleverly muddled up with the barnacle riddle, should probably be attached to I was with my lord in the highest sphere, line 5 and stanza 5. Kai appearing in the triads as one of the 3 diademed chiefs of battle possessed of magical powers. In the romance of Olwen and Kilwich, there is this description of him. He could hold his breath under water for 9 days and nights and sleep for the same period. No physician could heal a wound inflicted by his sword. He could make himself at will as tall as the tallest tree in the wood. His natural heat was so great that in a deluge of rain, whatever he carried in his hand remained dry, a hand's breadth above and below. On the coldest day, he was like a glowing fuel to his comrades. This is close to the account given of the sun hero Cuchulainn in his battle rage, but in the latter Arthurian legends, Kai had degenerated into a buffoon and chief of the cooks. The memory of the 13-month year was kept alive in the pagan English countryside until at least the 14th century. The ballad of Robin Hood and the Curtal Friar begins. But how many merry months be in the year? There be 13, I say. The midsummer moon is the merriest of all, next to the merry month of May. This has been altered in manifestly later ballad. There are 12 months in all the year, as I hear many men say, but the merriest month in all the year is the merry month of May.